In today's episode, we have special guest Chloe Daniels from Chloe Bear Money, and she is going to talk to us about the lazy way to invest. We are not talking about the unrealistic Wolf of Wall Street stuff. We are talking about set it and forget it, automated investing that anybody can do, and we want you to do that. So if this is of interest, take a listen today.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money flow.
Hey, babe. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about women and money, one of my favorite topics, whoop whoop, and we're going to be talking about how to invest the lazy way, which is even better because I think so many people have the misunderstanding that investing is difficult. And I mean, the industry and the jargon and all the things, it is a little intimidating. So we're going to break it down today with our guest, but we're not going to be talking about day trading or any of the crazy Wolf of Wall Street stuff. We're going to do it the lazy way with Chloe Daniels. Chloe!
I'm so excited. I feel like I have to give all of your guests or your listeners here a little disclaimer that I just moved this weekend. So my brain is moving a little slow, but we're gonna see what we can do, all right?
Yes. Look, listen, it's all about a fun, casual conversation. It's going to be fine. Not to worry. Let's get into your bio, Chloe, so that everybody knows who we're talking to, because we know how amazing you are, but we need everybody else to know as well.
Yeah.
Chloe Daniels, also known as Chloe Bear Money Coach, has built a community of over 300,000 on TikTok and social media by educating people on how to invest and build wealth the lazy way. We're going to get into that. Her work has been featured on CNBC, Entrepreneur, Bloomberg, Business Insider, and she's been a recent participant at White House influencer briefings for new policies on student debt and other issues her audience is facing. She was also awarded 2025 Best Overall Personal Finance Influencer by Bankrate. That's a big deal. Her ultimate goal is to provide education in a fun, easy to understand, and accessible way without the overwhelm, shame, and confusion often associated with finances. Chloe has worked with thousands of individuals to improve their finances. She has also worked with several women's groups, nonprofits, and companies such as Snapchat, Nationwide, Mint Mobile, Betterment, Clio, Capitalize, and more. Girl, you be out in these streets busy.
I know. I was like, man, I'm not going to lie. When you said the White House thing, I was like, I should make it clear that it wasn't this administration.
Listen,
I was like, ooh, I gotta update my bio.
Listen, I think all of our listeners know where we lie.
I assumed it.
And
Good.
Yes, I think we're clear.
And if they aren't clear, they are now.
They are now. Welcome to the pod. Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love that. So I mean, obviously we've been followers of your content for a long time. I don't even know how I found you. But I instantly was like, this is my girl. Like from the dance videos to, one of my favorite series that you do is like the money mistakes you made in relationships. We're going to have to get into that. You just keep it so real, and you really just take all the shame and guilt and like that stuffy air that is around the space of finance. You just remove all of it. And I love your content for that.
Thank you so much. I will never forget the first time you guys commented, or at least one of the first times you commented on some of my content. I think it was like one where I said like, I'm daddy or something along those lines. And you commented and I was like, wait, your handle is sugar, like be your own sugar daddy or something like that. I can't remember your handle off the top of my head.
It's changed.
It was like at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, my people. So I love the name of your podcast. I love the approach. I love it as well. And then we met at FinCon last year and I was like, oh, I like these people a lot. These are chill people.
Yeah, we try to be. We try to take the shame and stigma and all of the guilt and fear out of the conversation, just like you do. So we're in good company here. Yeah. So with all of our guests, Chloe, we jump in with your first money memory because we think that, what you remember about money from your early beginnings really can shape how you are with money today, so we'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, it's funny. When I had the podcast, The Money Bear, that's how I would end every episode. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's so cute.
I love it.
So my very first money memory happened when I was under the age of 7. I want to say it was probably 6 or 7. But my mom or my parents would give each of us $1 for an allowance every week. And I remember getting this dollar and she said, well, you can either spend it or you can save it. And I was like, well, why would I want to save it? Like, what's the purpose of saving it? And so I'd go with her to the Kmart every week with my little dollar. And the thing I distinctly remember purchasing was, at the time, there were these little like makeup kits for kids that were like $1. It was like a pack. It had like a little lip gloss, a little eyeliner, a little blush. And it was like this, like, there was no actual color to it. It was just like this goop essentially that was less than $1. I bought it and it was like melted and forgotten about within 24 hours. And I remember my brothers, on the other hand, they were way better about just saving their dollars for something that they really wanted to buy. And they'd buy cool things like remote control cars or robots and things like that. And I remember at that time thinking, wow, I guess girls are just bad with money and boys are good with money. And I was like 7 years old, and I did not even question that deeply rooted belief until way later, like in my late 20s, because it was just something that was buried down so deep of like, yeah. And my parents would reinforce that a lot of the times of like, oh, money just burns a hole in Chloe's pocket. Oh, your brothers are so good at saving. Why can't you and your sister be better at it? And so a lot of that belief was just reinforced over the years. And because of that, I never told myself like, hey, money's a skill. You could probably just learn it, because in my idea or my head, even though it was not really something I was aware of, it was just like, no, boys are good with money and girls are bad with money. So why would I try to learn? Why would I try to go do anything,
Were you and your sister both youngest?
Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest daughter, and then my sister is the second youngest.
Okay.
But we were both spenders. We took on that same role, but we were also the only ones who were interested in working as well. So like I started working when I was 9 because I liked money and I wanted to have money. And she started working around the same age as well. But it took us a while to learn how to keep the money.
Oh my gosh. Well, and so interesting that instead of saying, oh, they're saving their dollar to get the bigger item, they must just be good with money and I'm just bad with money. Instead of, no, they're just saving it and I'm spending it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I internalized it as, oh, this is my fault. I am just bad.
Which is such a woman thing to do, right? Because it could never be an external factor.
Never. And so that is, you could rinse and repeat on my whole life.
See, opposite us guys, like, it's got to be something else.
It's not me.
No accountability. No, none for the men. So how do we go from, and I love that you referenced the Kmart because,
only a niche audience will know that one.
Exactly. So you go from Kmart to you're a personal finance expert. You have certifications. You're teaching thousands of people. You're being invited to the White House. Like, take us on the journey. I mean, there's a lot of in between here.
There's a lot of in between. So, okay, let's see. Where do I begin? So when I was born, no, I'm just kidding. No. So in my early 20s, I had a lot of student loan debt, and I was broke. So even though in college, I would work sometimes between 2 to 3 jobs and take on like 24 semester hour loads. I was trying to graduate early. I was trying to do all of the things. Like I was working harder, not necessarily smarter. And I struggled with my mental health so much at that time in my life that I often would do things like just spend every dollar that I had on something that I thought would make me feel better, would make me like this will be the solution. This will be the thing that gets me out of my funk. This will be the thing that makes me finally feel better. This will be the thing, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously that never worked. And it would put me into situations where I'd have panic attacks on how the heck am I going to pay rent? How am I going to like keep doing this and not have to ask my parents for help. I never asked my parents for help because that was like a massive no-no, especially as the oldest daughter. And so I would just find myself in this situation over and over again where I'd have to go sell my clothes to help make ends meet for, paying rent and things along those lines, or paying the mental gymnastics of like, all right, if I write the check today and I put it in his safe deposit box tomorrow, which is the day that it's due, hopefully he won't pick it up till Friday, and then the money will be in the account. So a lot of that mental gymnastics, and it just again reinforces this idea that I'm bad with money. I'm clearly not the person who should be making these decisions. I need somebody else to do it for me. And so this belief started really, in my early 20s of like, you know what? The solution to all of this is just someday, whenever I get married or whenever I find a partner, they're going to be the ones who are going to be good with money. Like, let's just hope that they're way better at money than I was. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So there's a lot, as you said, I have a whole series of some of the bad decisions that I've made because of quote unquote love. But I'd essentially find myself in situation over and over again where I have exes who owe me, the most that an ex owes me is $50,000. I have many exes that owe me thousands, but I had an ex who, this was right before my rock bottom, I guess you could say. The same ex who owes me about 50 grand, he would use my credit cards to fund his business. And I would let him. I'd be like, oh man, look at me. I'm so together that he can use my credit cards to fund his business, which we know as business owners, you're not supposed to be doing for any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, I ended up having about $15,000 in credit card debt from him at some point, which he did eventually pay off, but it tanked my credit score because we were not able to make the payments. And when that relationship ended, it was 2018 where I had finally moved out, and I was sitting with the reality of where I was at. And it was just like, I am in no better of a financial position than I was. And if anything, I'm in a worse financial position than I was in, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And like, dumber people than me have figured this stuff out before. I cannot keep thinking that the solution to this is someone else, because time and time again, it's showing me that all these people I'm telling myself to rely on, like, they're worse with money than I am. And I'm just over here with my blinders on, my head in the sand, thinking like, okay, well, I can't do this, but they can do this. Let me put this responsibility on them. And then I'm ending up in worse and worse situations. So I finally was just like, you know what? What if I just try? What if I just try to figure this stuff out? I'm not stupid. And dumber people than me have figured this stuff out before. That is my life mantra, is dumber people than me have figured it out before. That and like, let's just try. Let's just have the audacity to try, because as a recovering perfectionist, as somebody who procrastinates until something is perfect all too often, the idea of let me just try and see what happens has become such an important staple in my life, because then you start doing and then you figure it out as you go. Whereas if you're just constantly preparing before it's perfect and you're like, I got to read 10 books on budgeting before I ever create a budget, I got to read everything about debt payoff, I got to do all of this, you're just never going to get started. And so that keyword try really enabled me to just be like, all right, well, as long as I'm trying, I'm making progress, let's see what happens. And so that kind of come to Jesus moment happened in October 2018. And the only real personal finance people that I knew of at the time were like Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman. And this one saving grace was this blog called Millennial Revolution. Do you guys know them? They did quit like a millionaire, Christy Chen, and I think it's Chrissy and Bryce. But
we'll
they were
look that up.
They were Canadian.
I've heard of Quit Like a Millionaire.
Yes, so that's them. They had a blog called Millennial Revolution. I assume they still have it up. It's a great blog. But I was so jealous of their life. They were these tech people who had quit their jobs to retire early and travel full time. And I was like, how is that even possible? How do they're so lucky them. And then finally I was just like, Chloe, what if you tried? Like, why are you just saying like, lucky them? Why don't you just try? Use this jealousy as a way to, push you forward. And so again, I was just like, all right, let's just figure this out. Let me focus first on, I thought my biggest problem was debt freedom. And so I focused on putting all of my extra income on debt for a while. And in the first year and a half, I put down about $20,000 on my debt, I believe it was, or it might have been 40,000. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think a recent post said 40.
Yeah, it was 40 grand in like a year and a half. Yeah. I was going so hard on paying off my debt, but my debt was a 3.54% interest rate. A 3.54% interest rate. And so eventually, as I continued my education and I continued learning, I started to realize that that wasn't as much of a priority as it was for me to start investing and getting invested as soon as possible. But I was terrified of investing. I had just gotten to this place where I was like decent at budgeting. I was decent at paying off my debt. And this idea of investing, it just felt like this thing that the dudes on Wall Street were able to do, not like the girl who studied English and Spanish in college and took logic instead of math. Like that was not something that I thought I would ever be able to do. But as I continued to educate myself, I couldn't keep the blinders on anymore. And so it was in 2020 that was the year I turned 30. I believe, or was it 2020? I don't know. Time, like I said, my brain isn't fully working today, but it was 2020 that I was like, you know what? Let me just try to figure this whole investing thing out. And sure enough, that was the year that I really learned a lot about investing, started managing my own investments, started working on things like maxing out a 401k, maxing out an IRA and stuff like that. And I fell in love with it. I just thought it was so interesting. And I realized it's more about learning a new language rather than learning the math, because the math is simple. The math is not something you really have to worry about that much. It's really about learning all the jargon. And that actually was a lot easier for me to learn than learning some complicated maths that luckily you don't have to. So yeah, that's kind of the long-winded roundabout way of how I got into finance. And then later on, I got my certifications to be an educator. And 2021 is when I started sharing stuff on the internet to be like, hey, here's what I'm learning. What do you guys think?
You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I say the same thing because like people always think that my job is so focused around math.
Right.
And like, obviously it has a math component to it, but I was like 99% of the things that I do has nothing to do with math.
Yeah, it's so emotional. A lot of it,
Yes.
like there's like you have to be a psychologist in ways or a therapist in ways. You have to be able to really work on the mindset side of things, and that's with like everyone. I don't know anybody who doesn't have money stuff like that they have to work through mentally. And then it's the language. It's the language of just learning all the jargon that's been used to gatekeep the finance industry from so many people.
You had said earlier that when you were in college that you didn't feel as though you can go to your parents for money. Was that more or less like your parents didn't have the means to help you? Or was it more of like you don't want to ask them for help?
Both, honestly. So I was parentified as a kid pretty early. I was the oldest daughter of 5 kids. And so it was like I knew the intimate struggles of finance that my parents were going through from the time that like 7 or 8 years old. I knew that there was a constant struggle for money. And even though there were years when things were fine, there were years that were not fine. In 2011, 2012, which was when I was really, really struggling with my mental health and living paycheck to paycheck and having to like sell my clothes and donate plasma to make rent. I didn't want to talk to my parents about it because my dad had been experiencing furloughs because they were still recovering from the great financial crisis of 2008. I knew how expensive that was. I believe my brother had started some treatments at that time too that were insanely expensive. So I was like, well, the last thing I can be is a burden to my parents. And there's been even times where like that's a whole other side story, but there's been times where my life was literally in danger. And I was like, I can't tell my parents because they don't have the funds and I don't want to be a burden to them. And that's something like I'm still healing from and learning from and being like, no, like you should have told your parents, you should have reached out because like if my daughter was in danger, I would want to obviously do anything I could, even if it put me in so much debt. But it was that not wanting to be a burden. I mean, that's something I still very much struggle with is like never wanting to be a burden, which helps me in the financial way because I'm very independent financially now, but something that I'm still very much learning, especially now that I'm with a healthy partner and we're getting ready to have kids next year and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I know you've also been very open about being like, I don't ever want kids. And now you're like madly in love and you are in a healthy, happy relationship. And you're like, I can't imagine not wanting a child with this person.
Yeah.
So let's pivot into like, what are you doing to prepare for children financially?
So much therapy.
Yeah. Good start.
I know that's not financial. I mean, you got to have money to do the therapy.
I mean,
but it's
an important
it's way more
part.
It's way more important than the money because you can have all the money in the world, and if you're not in the right headspace, you're gonna mess your kids up with nice things.
And I do not want to mess my kids up. And it's like I know I'm going to mess my kids up. I don't want to mess my kids up in the same way that I was messed up. Like I want the generational trauma to be a little less, or significantly less. So a lot of therapy. Both my boyfriend and I are big advocates of therapy. We want to get some couples therapy as well, because we're both in this odd boat, and I think more and more millennials will probably fall into this boat of neither of us ever thought about having kids. It was never even on our radar. So it's weird to have this shift in our mid 30s of like, oh no, now we've never wanted anything.
It's a big shift.
It's a huge shift. So that's something that we're both approaching of just like, we don't even know what questions to ask or what things we should be focusing on or what are good parents supposed to do, like things like that. And I know it's not going to be perfect. So I'll also be working on reducing my need for control.
Yeah, let that go.
But financially, so we're starting to save for, my first priority is to save for 3 months of maternity leave since I'm self-employed. Want to make sure that I have that expense is there. And luckily, we're a dual income household. He makes great money as well. So even if I didn't have that, we would be fine. But I want to be comfy. I don't want to have to worry about that. And I'd ideally would like to have enough to have an extended maternity leave. So that's number one priority. Then the second priority is just saving money for medical expenses and things along those lines. And then in addition to it, it's like, we're going to get married. We're going to get our prenup. We're going to get all that stuff in place as well. You know, the regular to-do list.
How does your partner feel that you're in this finance space? And was it awkward for him to have these conversations? Because obviously you're like, we're talking about it all. I'm sure you're like, show me all your numbers, log into your portals. Was he totally on board, or what was the situation there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional thing. For sure. To like, when we finally had the financial audit where like we had talked about finances very early in our relationship, like I got a very good sense of where he was at financially. But it wasn't until January that we're like, all right, we actually need to like really go through this so that I know exactly where you're at. And like, he's like, oh man, it's like getting naked for the first time in front of somebody, but like in such a deep way where there's a lot of shame associated with it, especially if you're like, ooh, I may be good with my finances, but I'm not as good as you are with finances. And so we kind of talked about it. And I've had a lot of practice in coaching people. So I'm like, listen, there is not going to be any shame here. There's not going to be any judgment. I understand that this is weird. If you want us, we can even hire another financial coach to do this with us. But he was really open about it. And then when we had our little financial audit afterwards, he goes, I feel so good. That was so great. He was like, all these fears that I had, the only reason those fears existed is because the light was turned off. And now that I've turned this light on and I'm looking at my financial house, it's so much less scary because actually we're doing pretty good. We're actually in a very good position and like so much farther ahead than he even expected us to be. So yeah, it was still even, I think too, it's like he's well versed and knows a lot about finances and more than the average person, but he's also like dating somebody who's a literal expert. So it's like gotta be an intimidating thing. So it was pretty easy to give him that empathy and compassion of like, we can take little tiny baby steps, but like as long as we're making progress and we're being honest with people or being honest with each other, that's what really matters. And so yeah, it's been relatively easy.
I'm going to steal that analogy of the light on thing, just so you know.
As you should. It was such a good one. I was like, dang, I need to talk to people. That's what I need to tell people as well, because it really is just a dark room filled with stuff that you're like, ooh, I'm scared of what's in there. But then the second you turn the light on, you're like, wait, this is so much easier. This is more manageable, for sure.
Or it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. Or even if it is worse than what you thought it was, it's like, okay, now I know.
Now you know. Now you can put a plan in place. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about the prenup? I mean, is it safe to assume that he expected you to want a prenup? Did you guys both come to that conclusion pretty quickly, or
so we were listening to, have you heard of Two Hot Takes? It's like
Yes.
Yeah, so we love Two Hot Takes. We love like going over moral conundrums. And so we were listening to Two Hot Takes episode where I believe they were talking about prenups, and it was again like the role reversal, or the traditional role reversal, where the woman was asking for a prenup and the dude was like, how dare, like a prenup. And so I was like, we should probably talk about this, right? Like, we know, and it was early. We were like 3 months into our relationship and we already pretty much knew. I was like, so what is your take on a prenup? I know, I'm obviously pro prenups.
You're like, you're not taking my money.
Oh yeah. And he was, well, and he's got generational wealth on his side. So it's like, he's got things to protect as well. And, he was like, I've never really thought about it before. And he was like, but like, yeah, I'm fine with it. And when I explained to him, and like, he was already on board, he was already fine with it. I was like, yeah, for me, it's such a no-brainer, because what people don't often understand is that you already have a prenup in place. You already have a prenup in place. Do you really think the government, your state government, has been batting 100? Like, you really want to put your life and future into the hands of your state? Like, probably not. I'd rather have a say in it. And one of the things that I have said many times is that one of the most underrated benefits, I would say, of having a prenup and getting a prenup in place is that conversation that has to take place. One of the most important conversations that you're ever going to have as a couple. Yeah. And it's like seeing how that person responds to that type of conversation when things are high stakes. It's going to be so telling of what they would be like in other hard decisions, but also what they would be like in a divorce. If they are a nightmare in getting a prenup in place, imagine what a nightmare they're going to be if you got divorced. So it's like, it's such an important test that I think everybody should go through.
Yeah. Yeah, we just completed a post-nup. Yeah. And we had Aaron Thomas from prenups.com, and he completely changed our thought process on the whole thing, because before I had probably the stereotypical thought on like a prenup.
You're planning on your marriage to fail, right?
Or like, we don't have a ton of assets. It really doesn't matter.
Oh, I hear that all the time too.
Completely changed our thought process around that. But like you said, every state already has a prenup, so why not write your own?
Yes,
you gotta write your own rules. Yeah.
Yeah, and then people are like, how much did the post-nup cost you guys?
So we did a deal because we had Aaron on the podcast, and he's sponsoring the podcast.
Nice.
He does a flat fee, and I think it's like if you're doing a regular prenup and you're not, hardcore celebrity or whatever, I think it's $3,500.
Oh,
I think
okay.
That's
his
flat fee.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I feel like people should just work that into the budget, is like, it's so important. And like, if you don't do one, then get a post-nup. Like, there are other ways.
Yeah. Almost 9 years. How long have we been married?
We'll be 9 years in October.
Okay, yeah. 9 years married, 12 years together. Yes. I don't know.
Yes, that's
and we obviously were like money nerds, and so we loved the process. We loved the conversation. We loved there was there was nothing to uncover, right? Yeah. It was like, okay, well, what are the last 4 numbers of that account? Okay, type it into. That was it, right?
Yeah.
But we did talk about things that technically aren't in the post-nup. Mm-hmm. But it was almost like Aaron kind of called it our like morality clause. So we talked a lot about our children, right? Like in the event that we were to get divorced, how far can we live away from our children, right? What happens? We have this big house. What if you move out? How long is it going to take for you to move out? How long do we have for the accounts to separate? What now? You have to go and buy new furniture. I want my kids to be in a safe space with a comfy bed and whatever. So now you need a budget for new furniture. I mean, we talked about all of that, and we put things in place to say, all right, if you move out, you get $5,000 to furnish your new apartment, and that comes from the joint account. We put things like that in place, and it was just such a comforting conversation. Like, now we know. We know because we put the rules in place while we're in love, while we respect each other, while things are good. And we loved it. But again, you probably will love the process.
Oh, I love it. We both will. Like, it's something that we always talk about. Like, at the end of the day, no matter, like, I have every intention of being with Charles for the rest of my life. Charles has every intention of being with me for the rest of my life. But shit happens. Like, period, end of story. Like, people change. People get brain injuries. People, like, things happen. Yeah. And so it's like, you just want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And like, oh my gosh, that would be such a peace of mind of being like, people don't even realize those types of things that you can put in place.
Yes.
And like,
we didn't.
I wouldn't even, the level of detail, like, you think of like the high level stuff that goes into a prenup, but when it comes to like, how would we actually handle this divorce? That would save so many people so much time. And I actually heard.
And money.
Yes. And time, money, pain, having, because the fact that you're putting together a plan when you still love each other and you still respect each other, that is such an act of love. Like,
it is.
It really is.
It really is.
So we even talked about, if things are starting to get rocky, like how many marriage therapy sessions we had to go to.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
And down to the portion of, okay, anybody can initiate a request for therapy at any time. And then we have a rule around that. The person who requests the therapy has to present 3 therapists that are approved by your insurance, already vetted.
I
And
love
then the
that.
person who is being asked to go to therapy gets to choose. So then that way, the other person can't say, well, you chose a therapist that you liked and did it, like we wanted to get all that kind of bias and stuff out of the way. But again, now there is a rule in place. Within 30 days of requesting therapy, we need to have our first scheduled session. I mean,
I love that.
Those are things that you can have that conversation when love is high, respect is high, you're in a good space. You can't have that conversation when you're pissed at each other and you're like, I'm done. So
right. Exactly.
It's so valuable. We even said one thing that I was firm on, and it's not in the prenup or in the postnup because you can't put things about your kids in. So again, it's like a little addendum that we did. But I was like, if we were ever to get divorced, I'm not doing this, trading the kids in the middle of the week, on 3 days, off 2 days. You have them every other third. I'm not doing it. It's 1 week on, 1 week off.
Oh,
the end.
That's got to be so destabilizing for kids too, like halfway through the week. I mean, even for the last year.
And it's a scheduling nightmare.
Scheduling nightmare. And it's like for the last year, until we literally just moved in together this weekend, I would just spend weekends at his place, and it sucks. It's so annoying being like, my stuff isn't here, and like you're constantly forgetting things, and I'm like, it's so nice just to be in a space where all of our stuff is in one place.
One place.
So I can only imagine as kids. But anyway, sorry to get on such a tangent.
No. It's
I
so
definitely,
good.
when we get the prenup, you guys have an affiliate code or something?
Yeah, we'll send you the link. Yeah,
Awesome.
Aaron was great. He
was at
makes
FinCon.
it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he makes it so easy to understand, and he gives you things to think about that you wouldn't have thought about outside of the numbers.
For sure.
So it was really a great experience, and so fast. I mean, you guys have your stuff together. We all had the flu at one point, but we would have been done under 30 days, easy.
Amazing.
So absolutely can't recommend him enough. Let's pivot into your community that you've built and how you're helping. I would say it's specifically women or catered to women, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Women and gay men.
Oh, I love that. Okay, perfect. Talk to us about your community, what you offer, how you work with people. What does that all look like?
Yeah, so I'm creating free content on the internet every single week. A lot of folks find me on Instagram or TikTok. And in terms of the way that I actually work with folks, I've got a community called my Lazy Investors, who are part of the Lazy Investors course, which is where we teach folks how to make their own decisions when it comes to their finances and really focusing on investing. So teaching people things about their retirement accounts, teaching things about like, what are the different types of investments out there? What are the pros and cons of each of these different types of investments? How do you analyze an investment? How do you decide if it's right for your portfolio? All of that stuff, so that they can go from, I could never invest, I'm never going to be able to do that, to like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm like making my own portfolio and I'm figuring out these investments. So that's my big thing as an educator, is always to give people the education that they need to make their own decisions, but also to know when to reach out to a professional and to be like, hey, you know what? I actually do want to hire a CFP for, figuring out this backdoor Roth IRA, because those are really complicated, even though the internet makes it seem like they're the easiest thing ever. And it's like, having the language. I have tons of most of my students, I will say, once they finish the course or they finish the program, they do go on to manage their own investments, and then occasionally will hire like fee-only CFPs for certain problems. But a lot of my older students who are, maybe a little bit closer to retirement will work with a financial professional who they see on a regular basis, but it's like now the conversations that they're having are so much better. So that's what I'm here for, is educating folks so they can have better conversations and make decisions now and in the future.
Okay, Chloe, talk to us about lazy investing. Like, people listening, they're probably driving, walking the dog, they're not sitting in front of their computer. If they get anything from you today and they log off from this platform, how does one lazy invest? What do they need to do?
So the whole theory behind lazy investing is this idea that most of us, when we think about investing, we think it means buying and selling individual stocks, getting the hot stock tip on what's going to go to the moon and getting in on it before everybody else does. But in reality, that's a whole lot more like gambling than it is true investing, where instead of doing that, what we recommend is buy the whole market. Do not be focusing on buying an individual stock, because unless that's like your gambling portfolio that you're okay with potentially losing, we want to be buying the entire stock market. And there's a lot of really easy ways that you can do it. My favorite way to do it is through something called index funds. So that's what we teach a lot of inside of the Lazy Investors course. But index funds, essentially the way that you can think about it is, let's say you were going to a 7-Eleven and you were like, man, I'm craving something sweet, but I have no idea what I have no idea what my craving is for. So you pick up a Kit Kat and you're like, hopefully this fulfills my sweet craving. Hopefully this is the thing that like I go home with and I'm satisfied with. It's a winner, right? But let's say instead of doing that, you're like, man, I really don't know what I'm craving. So instead I'm going to buy this big Halloween-sized bag of candy bars. And surely, with the hundreds, if not thousands of different candy bars inside of there, surely I will find a winner in here. Surely there will be something that will actually fulfill my chocolate craving. That's what it's kind of like when you buy an index fund. When you're buying one chocolate bar, that's like buying one stock. You hope that chocolate bar is the winner. You hope that's the one that's going to fulfill that craving. But if you're like, I don't really know, because most of us don't know, all of us don't know, I would say, of what's going to be the winner. Even the dudes on Wall Street, the finance bros, the TikTok bros, they don't actually know. So instead, it's smarter to just buy the whole bag of chocolates where you have hundreds, if not thousands of different options inside, just like an index fund that's going to contain hundreds, if not thousands of different stocks inside of it. So studies have shown over and over again that this is the much more effective way. Even when I was going through my CFP coursework, it was like I remember highlighting in my book about investments, it was like, most people are better off with index funds because picking individual stocks in actively managed portfolios does not work. So
Warren Buffett
I was going to say, even Warren Buffett is like index funds.
everybody. And so anyway, in terms of how do you do that, if you're like, all right, cool, I'll try this out. The way to do it with literally zero knowledge is one of two ways. So if you leave this podcast and you're like, all right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes setting up an index fund portfolio, one of the things that you can do that will take you less than 10 minutes is you can use something like a robo-advisor. So Fidelity has a robo-advisor. Betterment, I think, is like the most popular one out there. You've got Wealthfront. You've got a bunch of different options out there. The idea behind a robo-advisor is essentially an algorithm that's acting as your financial advisor, where it's going to take some information from you and then it's going to kick back out a recommended portfolio for you. So it'll ask you, like, how old are you? When do you want to access this money? How comfortable are you with investing? Et cetera, et cetera. It will then take all that information and then it will suggest, hey, here's a portfolio we think that you could do. We could set it up so that you're putting $100 a month away into this or however much you want to, and it's automatically going to invest in these things. Most robo-advisors use index funds. Betterment, I know all index funds. Wealthfront, I believe, uses index funds. Fidelity uses index funds. So you're already doing the hard work of like, okay, I'm invested. I've got diversified investments. I'm most likely in index funds. Boom, that's great. You will, the con is that it can only produce as good of data as you give it. So if you're in there with it saying like, oh, I'm terrified to invest, it may put you in a way too conservative portfolio. So that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you're done. You can get started with it, but you still need to continue your education because again, bad data in, bad data out. So we've got to check to make sure, like, once you've learned more about index funds, you can go back in and decide, okay, is this what I really want to be invested in or not? The other downside is you will be paying a fee, but most of the fees are like 0.25% versus something like working with a traditional advisor, which is usually around like 1% AUM. So that's one way to get started with zero knowledge. The other way to get started with zero knowledge is to use target date funds. Now, not all target date funds are created equal. Some of them have index funds inside of them. Some of them don't. The target date funds that I have found to be the best are the Vanguard target date funds. Fidelity has some target date index funds available as well. But a target date fund, essentially, most of you who are listening, if you have a 401k or a 403b, likely your 401k or 403b has you in a target date fund. This target date fund, the idea behind it was a simple solution for people to be able who have no education on investing to be able to pick a fund that has the target date of when they want to retire or access the money. So you'll go into your 401k, you'll see like Vanguard Target Date Fund 2050. That means that portfolio is designed for somebody who is planning to retire in 2050. So you got to do that math of when do I want to retire? But once you know that date, 2050, 2060, 2065, whatever it is, that's what you're going to be looking for is like, okay, Vanguard target date funds or Fidelity target date fund 2060, 2055. You'll pick the closest date to when you plan to retire. So they usually come in 5-year increments. I would suggest going the farther date out rather than the closest date. But that's going to give you a pre-made portfolio. Like I said, a lot of the times they'll have index funds in there, but you can just have that well-diversified portfolio that, again, you're not going to stop educating yourself because you may go into that target date fund and realize, oh, there's way too much international in here, or there's way too much bonds inside of here, but at least you'll get started. And I am a huge proponent of get started and figure it out as you go, because it's like the biggest thing is if you get into just the habit of putting $100 a month into a robo-advisor, that's a lot easier to get you to from $100 to a robo-advisor every month to $1,000 into your own managed portfolio. Like those steps in between those two is a lot easier to get to than just the I'm not an investor, I don't do anything. So it's like, if we can get you into the habit of doing something and continuing your education, that's huge.
Absolutely love that. I think that, we've talked about that on so many of our episodes as well. And, I always make the analogy of this isn't Wolf of Wall Street. We don't have screens in front of us. We're not yelling on the phone, trying to buy individual anything. Set it and forget it, automate it, build the muscle of investing something every single month, even if it's $5, $10, whatever you can do, and get started, because if every day that you don't start, you're absolutely missing out on growth.
Yep.
And even those individuals who are on social media and stuff like that talking about quote unquote the more sexy stuff of the individual stocks, I can guarantee you that the bulk of their portfolio is in that basic vanilla stuff that we talk about.
Boring investing.
Good investing is boring. Good investing is boring. When I have students who are like, okay, I have my index fund portfolio set up, but I kind of want to do some individual stocks. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with having individual stocks inside of your portfolio. It's just you have to be willing. That's like money that you're willing to risk. It's not my whole retirement. It's like, okay, I'm going to take 5% of my portfolio and put it into some individual funds, or I'm going to take 2% of my portfolio and put it into some crypto. It's like those types of things. You just have to think about them a little bit differently before putting them into your portfolio.
Yeah, and the mix that you just said, like the 5% from a mathematical standpoint, if it went to zero, it's not going to tank your portfolio.
Exactly.
But if it does hit, then it can exponentially increase it.
Exactly. And it's like, that's the stuff that you're willing to gamble with, but it's like, you have to ask yourself, what percent am I willing to gamble with? What percent am I willing to risk?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're really big on the education.
The education piece is huge, because I'm not saying obviously the average individual needs to be an expert, but they do need to have some base level of financial literacy so that they can understand, hey, in this scenario, is this good for me or is this not good for me? Because with so much information out there on the internet, it's great that the information's out there, but now it's information overload.
So confusing.
And then also it's like, who's actually providing good information? And then actually, out of good information, what's applicable to my situation? Because I think even sometimes in scenarios where people think that they should be getting, good advice, they're not. Like, I had a client who was 30 years old, and through her work, they had her in a fixed deferred annuity. Yes, see the face.
For those of you listening.
30.
Oh my gosh.
But then that's the stuff that gives financial professionals a bad reputation, because it's like, you're scammy, you're selling me things that I don't need. Commission. They want to make the commission.
He was spending $3,000 a year into this thing, and I'm like, I was like, this person, I'm not going to say they did terrible, but they did terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because when I have folks who go through the community or go through the program and then they go look at what their financial advisor is doing, they're like, holy crap, I was paying 8% fees or something crazy like that. Or they had me all in bonds, or all of it was sitting in cash. I've had somebody who...
With a financial advisor?
I have had somebody who, their financial advisor never invested their money. I've also had somebody who was...
You should sue.
Yeah. I've had somebody who was with a financial advisor for 5 years. He forgot to toggle on reinvest dividends. So she had over $20,000 sitting in cash. So it's like... This is the importance of the education of, at the very minimum, the basics, because you just don't know if your financial professional is actually a good one or not. And unfortunately, the word financial advisor, it's not regulated. So it's like an insurance salesman can say, I'm a financial advisor, and yet they're just there to sell you insurance products. And they actually don't know anything about Roth IRAs or index funds, So I'm deeply passionate about the education as well, because it's just like, even if you think you are with the best financial advisor because he's been with your family for 20 years and your parents are doing fine. You still want to know if they're making decisions that are right for you or not, or at least be able to flag something and to also understand what they tell you. Like,
or to ask the right question.
Exactly. Because so many times you'll ask something and then they just respond to you with a bunch of jargon. You're like, oh, I'm stupid. I don't know these answers, so I'm just not going to ask anything, you know? And so it's like,
and then you end up with $20,000 sitting in cash and not invested.
Exactly.
My number one red flag for people is that anytime you're starting to maybe interview for a financial advisor, whatever it may be, if that advisor does not lead with asking you a ton of questions and leads with, oh, you should be in this or you should be in that, turn the other way.
Yep.
Like, anytime somebody asks me a question, I'm like, even just our friends will ask me a question. I was like, well, I got like 15 questions to ask you first.
100%. And like, I feel like on the internet, in the internet world, people get frustrated when they ask a question and they want a direct answer. But like, usually my response is, it depends.
It depends.
Like,
that's my number one response.
It's his number one answer.
Because it always depends. There are very few things in personal finance that's 100% no, you know, like I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Although some of the permanent life insurance policies are pretty high up there.
I give people, like I said, like if you ever hear the person say guaranteed, that is like a no within finance. So if they say guaranteed, for the most part, you need to turn around and walk the other way.
Yeah.
That and like if they're avoiding your questions or they get mad at you for asking questions.
They won't tell you how they get paid. I said, like, I'll tell people 100%. You can ask me anytime you want how I get paid.
Have you ever heard somebody saying like, yeah, my advisor said that I'm not paying any fees? I'm like,
I hear that all the time.
Like, no, he definitely
you just
is getting
don't know
paid.
where they're coming from.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Just like your car insurance person is getting a commission, you know, like, I mean, somebody is making money somehow, whether you recognize that or not. People are getting paid. So if you don't feel comfortable asking, you shouldn't be working with that person. And I mean, people know that they can ask Brandon, like, hey, well, from this product versus this product, how much are you making? And I can tell you, any of the things that Brandon's putting in place are not keeping our lights on for our family. You know what I mean? Like, because he's not a scammy human. So.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, and then what's really sad is that those people who are being duped, right, by a financial professional might then be completely resistant to reaching out when they actually do need to work with somebody good when it comes to life insurance, disability insurance, right? Putting pieces of that financial portfolio together that really should still be there, but then they've been scarred and they feel like, icky, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame them though, because the financial services industry has done a terrible job. Like, as a whole, it's we have ourselves to blame. I say we because I'm in it. I'm not part of that group.
You're not part of that group. Yeah. You're an educator. At the end of the day, you're doing the good work of putting forward the information that like you believe in. And it's hard because we're not only battling against just a general lack of knowledge, we're also battling against the people who are actively scamming people. And I think we see that, at least personally in my space, I see it most with IULs, VULs, things along those lines, where people are just talking about these like golden goose, and like they're so effective at getting that information out on TikTok and Instagram. And like there are huge players in that industry. And it's like, we're not just working with, let me teach a blank slate. No. No one is a blank slate when it comes to money. And it's like you first have so much misinformation that you have to wade through to get to them, but then you also have all the mental stuff too. So it's important work, and we will be employed for a very long time, I think.
Yes. So Chloe, this is now your full-time business, right? Talk to us about entrepreneurship, kind of highs, lows, lessons learned, for anybody listening who maybe has a handle on investing in their portfolio, but is now thinking, okay, maybe I can start my own business. What would you say to them?
Oh, that's a good question.
Still figuring it out.
Oh my God, that's a good question. I will tell you, I've been full-time for almost 4 years now, and been running Clobear for about 5 years. I started Clobear Money Coach in 2021, and I started a blog way back in like 2018 or 2017 where I was talking about like mental health and relationships and stuff like that. I would say that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It's very difficult at times, and the internet makes it seem like it's really, really easy and really, really glamorous.
Yeah.
So what my biggest piece of advice to wanna be self-employers or self-employed, wanna be entrepreneurs, wanna be start a small business, start a side hustle is always, always, always test it first. Do not have this big, bold idea that you're going to quit your job to pursue from ground one. Like, you need to be doing the thing while you have a paycheck coming in, or else you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to be stressed all the time, and you're going to run out of money. And that's my biggest piece of advice is like, try it out before you decide to just jump ship. For me, I made sure I had a year emergency fund, and I had been making what I needed to make for at least 6 months before I jumped ship. But that's the big one is like, if you want to enjoy the experience, if you want to be in it for a long time, you gotta kind of build a little bit slower in the beginning to start testing it out. So, and if not, like, I understand some people, some circumstances, they're like, I'm working 14 hours a day. There's literally no way for me to do this on the side, but I know I need to do it. Okay, if that's the case, we got to be working on building a nice buffer fund for you that you could live off of that buffer for 6 months while you're getting this off of the ground. So that's my biggest piece of advice. But I think also, gosh, there's so many things. I've just started business coaching as well, so there's a lot of things that are top of mind. But I think be willing to try things. Like, I feel like at least 50% of what I do, if not more, is testing things and seeing if it works or not. And almost all of your tests are going to fail, and that's normal. But then you hit one thing that works really, really well, and you add it into your rotation of whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's a content piece, whether that's a process, whether that's a funnel, whatever it is, whether it's a simple email that works really well for you. You have to be flexible to try new things and be willing to fail. And the faster you can do that, the faster you're going to find success. Is like, it's truly your ability to test things and your ability to adapt quickly.
Fail fast. I love
fail
that.
Fast. Fail fast. I didn't say that first. I know somebody else said that, but it is so true.
It's so true. Okay, what about in relationships? If you had to put like ladies, never do this in a relationship. And I know we have limited time, but
I know.
What would you say?
Oh, dang. I love that you guys are like, is there any topics that we should avoid? I'm like, no, not at all. Bring it. I love that you're asking about this. From a financial perspective, and it's crazy because when I share these stories about what have happened to me in past relationships, I am shocked by the overwhelming amount of comments that are like, this happened to me too. Like, I did this too. And I felt so stupid and I felt so ashamed. My biggest piece of advice is to not invest in someone to the extent that do not be investing into someone you barely know. Like, if you are putting forth all the money for all of the dates, if you are buying them expensive gifts, if you are trying to show your love through money, which is something I 100% did from the time that I was a little kid, you need to be asking yourself if this is somebody who you are already in a committed relationship who is giving you the same energy back or not. And it's hard to not have your love goggles on and to be like, oh no, he just doesn't have a job and hasn't had a job for the 6 months because he's trying so hard at this thing. And he's not willing to take these jobs because he's looking for the right thing. Like, you have to ask yourself, what are the excuses that I'm telling myself? And how is this impacting me? Like, I can't tell you how many women I've heard who are like, yeah, I pay the rent and he just like video games at home and because he's looking for a job, or, he, every time I build something, he tears it back down. Like, I save up an emergency fund and he spends it on something else. Or like, you have to be able to have a moment where you're looking at reality and you have to ask yourself, are they investing into this relationship to the same extent in which I'm investing into this relationship? So for me, that showed up in a lot of ways of being willing to front bills, being willing to let them do stuff like I had no business letting people do. And with this relationship that I'm in now, I was working with a love coach, which I think you guys know.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I had to work on was trying to not show my love through my money. And it was like, to me, my subconscious belief was like, well, this is my value. I am valuable because this is what I bring to the table, is that I am a provider. I am somebody who can take care of people and can spend money on people. And what I wanted, though, was somebody who was willing to invest in me in the same way and wasn't just looking at me as a bank account or somebody who can fund their lifestyle or, be the provider. And I wanted to be provided for too, on an emotional level and on at least an equal footing situation. But it was so hard for me to not constantly offer to pay for everything with Charles, that even on the first date, when I showed up, I was like 5 minutes late and I instantly was like, oh, I was late, I'll pay. And I shoved myself in front of him and I put my card down and I told my love coach about it. She's like, Chloe, what are you doing? We're trying to stop this pattern. And like, if you're constantly showing that they don't have to do anything and you're willing to do all of this emotional labor and financial labor and all of this stuff, like, this is the type of person you're going to attract. You're going to keep attracting people who don't have to put anything in because you're busy doing it all. And so I just had open conversations with him at the very beginning. I was like, all right, so this is something I'm working on, is not paying for everything all of the time, because there's this deeply rooted belief in me that that is where my value is. And I'm trying to change that story. And so we just talked about it. And like, he was like, all right, cool. I'm totally happy to pay for dates. And I was like, that's weird. I didn't know that was a thing, like that people are okay with that. And it was still uncomfortable. So, just really trying to keep reality at the focus, which is something that I struggled with for a really long time, and seeing if somebody is investing in you in the same way that you're investing in them.
I think women often fall in love with the potential of the person instead of the reality that the person is showing.
Men don't do that.
It's so hard. I know. It's so hard. It's like, you're like, that was me to a T. And it's like, it's so hard to look at reality and to be like, I was 100%, I was the chooser. I was the one putting myself in those situations over and over again. And I had this mentality of like, no one shows up for me. I just keep picking all these loser men, or all these loser men are attracted to me. And what I didn't realize is like, I was picking that over and over again. I was allowing that over and over again. I was repeating the same patterns over and over again. So if you find yourself in that position and can afford it, a love coach, a good one, it sounds so silly.
Can help undo that.
Oh my God. It sounds so silly. When I heard it, I was like, that sounds like a scam. And then I worked with the most amazing one. And then I found Charles.
The love of your life.
And
here you are.
Like, and he was like the fourth date that I went on, which is insane.
I feel like I have the most boring dating life evidently leading up to you. Because like,
I mean, compared to Chloe,
I don't have any crazy stories.
But I have an exceptional number of crazy stories from a lot of trauma in my past that I didn't know I had. And so it wasn't until I was able to work through a lot of that stuff. And I was like, why am I attracting all this chaos? Charles is the same way though. He's like, you look at he's like had like 3 relationships and all of them were not toxic at all. And I'm like, wow, what is that like?
Yeah. You're like, tell me more.
It's crazy.
Oh
People exist like that.
But I think it's in part too why you've built the community that you've built, because you show up so authentically and so transparent and like, hey, ladies, here's how I lost $50,000 and here's how I tanked my credit score. And oh yeah, he came back to me a second time and I was like, sure, I'll invest again, even though the first 3 businesses failed, because this time it's got to work. I mean, you just show up authentic and truthful, and I think especially the internet world is craving that, and so you do such a wonderful job, and we're so happy that we got to chat with you today. I know you've talked about a lot of things, and we kind of ended on the relationship thing. If you could leave our audience with a financial thought of like, what do you want to leave our audience with when it comes to money? What's a thought?
It's so much easier than you think. Like becoming successful with your finances, becoming somebody who is building wealth actively and getting their first 100K and their second 100K and on their way to their first million. It's not as difficult as you think. You do not have to do complicated strategies or, become an expert in the personal finance world. You can very easily build wealth, even if you're making mistakes or you've made massive mistakes like giving an ex $50,000. You can overcome. It's just about learning a new language and setting yourself up for small changes that make a big impact over time. I think that a lot of people don't get started because they're so overwhelmed because there's so much information out there. But remind yourself that dumber people than you have figured it out before, because oh my gosh, there's a lot of dumb people out there who are very wealthy And I promise you can do it too.
We say the same thing about parenting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
You'll be
gosh.
just fine. You'll be just fine.
You're
The
fine.
fact that you're even thinking about wanting to undo generational trauma and the fact that you're already in therapy and just all the things, you're leaps and bounds ahead. And we always say this, we're like, the fact that we're stressing about all of it means that we're good parents, because good
Being
parents
a bad
are
parent is
exhausting.
stress-free.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's wild
Yeah.
to think about. Yeah. That's what
Exactly.
I keep reminding myself of that too, is like, I'm going to do my best and
You're
I'm
gonna be
going to
great.
be present and I'm doing what I can. So we'll
Yes.
see what happens.
Oh, well, we are so rooting for you. We can't wait to see that part of the journey. Chloe, thank you for being with us on the Sugar Daddy podcast. We so appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It was delightful talking to you guys.
Oh, thanks.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow.